Hello everybody, welcome to the sound test room. Today we are taking a look at a new app from Blue Mango called Velocity Filter. Now, this is a really easy program to use and understand, but it's mind-bogglingly useful. Okay, so this takes away the problem that some synths do not have velocity control, but it does a lot more than that as well. Okay, so for instance, a perfect example is this particular patch in Mood Synth, which is patch number 1. If I bring it up here, if I play this MIDI keyboard, the Auria key step, very, very lightly, hardly touching, and if I play it really hard, you'll see that on that particular patch, there's no velocity at all applied, okay? And maybe you can't even apply velocity to that patch. However, if you would like to have velocity control on that particular patch, you could put in a velocity filter here like this. And let's see how this works. Right? If I touch this really lightly now, what it's also doing is filtering the top end. So not only is it you're controlling velocity, but you're also controlling a filter as well. Well, not the filter on Mood Synth, but this filter. So listen to what happens now, and you can actually watch it, right? And if we can hold a range. So if I hold a note, we can open this filter up even more than Moods is, and we can now, did you hear that little? There's like a little clunk there, like that. In the next example, I'm going to show you how you can stop that. But what that is because Velocity Filter is receiving MIDI and audio, the time difference between the MIDI and the audio is when it's fully open like this, you're clamping down that filter very, very fast, and you'll possibly get a little, I don't know if you can hear it there, but I've got a better patch set up to demonstrate that better. Right, now, before we move on to all this stuff, I want to show you how you have to have this set up. So you'll see that Mood here is set to my Auria key step. And then also Velocity Filter also has to be routed to the key step. So they both have to be sending, MIDI information needs to be going to both of these from the key step. So you can see that you get an awful lot amount. Now that would be too much for me on this particular one. So it's just a lot of expression that was never there, and you could never have that kind of expression there. If you wanted it to behave like, say, the patch did have ordinary velocity. Okay, so we can set that. See, now there's no filtering, just velocity, and that's normally how velocity would work on a synth. If you wanted to set up filtering, you'd have to set up automation on the filter cutoff and stuff like that. So that becomes a little bit of a little bit of a pain and a little bit more difficult to do. So with this filter here, you have loads and loads of tone control as well. Actually, tons and tons. If we go, but you'll hear that. Hear it where the filter clamps down. If I play this really hard now and then really softly, you'll hear a little clunk. But if I play it again softly, you won't hear it. I'll show you how you fix that in this next patch. So in this next example here, I have this Troublemaker. Let's just turn the volume down on that. I have Troublemaker here. Again. There's a little bit there, but hardly any. If I gauge velocity filter now. And I wanted to set this up like this to show you. You can hear that little clamp down on the filter really easy now. If we do this. Hear it? If we go into settings, you have a latency compensation, which sometimes helps and sometimes doesn't, but that just adds a couple of milliseconds of latency to the actual sound. Please be really careful when you switch this on, because there will be, because it's engaging an audio buffer, it'll pop. So if I turn the volume down, you'll still hear it a little bit, maybe not. Sometimes you do get a pop though, so please really be careful. But you can still hear it, right? So we can take that out. What we can do, which is much better, or works much better for me, is this filter transition time, okay? So if we start to take that down, okay, you can still hear it. It's slightly better. It's gone. So now there's, even if I go really fast from full velocity to nothing, there's still none of that click. So if you're getting that pop and you're thinking, what is that's like an audio clicky thing, take your filter transition time down, and then your velocity curve, you'll see, oh, see? So remember that if you want it to behave just like an ordinary, a standard kind of velocity, so you don't want the sound filtered, you just want it to get louder from quieter, we can move the lower range up. And then it will just get louder over time, not filtered. So it's getting really loud there, so we could. It's great because you've got all the controls, see? And then we can. I think it's nice. It gives you expression and control where you never had any before. On certain synthesizers, some synthesizers just don't have velocity, they're just synths, and this adds a nice filter and all velocity control as well, which is very cool beans. Okay, other example is Polyphonic. Okay, so here we have a really lovely brass sound. Sorry, you can have all these engaged at the same time, but you know, if you want to, you can. So you can get tons and tons of control. So there's this lovely brass sound from Synth Master on. And here's the sound without the velocity filter engaged. So velocity there is open and the cutoff on Synth Master. So let's engage this. So now I have a lot more. And last but not least, on say, on say sound like this works really well with acoustic, you know, acoustic instruments like guitars, marimbas. You can set this up for drums and stuff. You can set it up for drums and stuff, and anything that's acoustic, this works really well. Because if you play an acoustic instrument, right, you'll know that if you play it really hard, it's going to resonate. It's going to be brighter. You'll get a brighter resonance of the sound coming through. Whereas if you play it softer, you'll lose some of the high frequencies. And that's what gives expression to stuff, you know, in orchestras and things like this. So if you're playing like an oboe, you can hear that the pure gospel musicians have put that into. So they've added velocity in, but you can go even further now with start to filter it as well. Which means that if you go from the top of the keyboard at a higher velocity and move down, it's almost like key tracking on a synth, where you set the key track and then either plus or minus, and it'll kind of close the filter as you move down. But you've got total control, so you could go like, say, it's a beautiful thing. It really is. Really, really, very, very useful for keyboard players who want to add dynamic expression to literally anything. It doesn't matter if the patch has anything that you put through this, you can add more velocity or velocity filter in. And don't forget the trick of fixing that. You don't hear it on everything, but you can fix like the velocity. Excuse me, you can do the transition time. Oh, I've just turned the volume down, don't matter. But, you know, like we showed you in the other patch, it's much easier to just mess with the filter transition or try. But please, if you do turn latency compensation on, it's quite possible that you'll get quite a loud audible click. And that's not a pleasant thing to experience, is it? So there you go. So there we have it. Velocity filter. You have all this control over the range of the filter. So don't forget, if you just literally wanted it like to react like a normal velocity with no filtering at all, you just take the filter all the way out. So you can move this up here and set your range, of course. So you can set the volume range as well, or you can move your filtering, and you can see the frequency. Awesome. Cool beans. Top job. Okay, guys, thanks for watching. I'll put a link in for velocity filter in comments below. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video and can subscribe to the channel or like the video, or even consider becoming a patron from as little as $1 a month to help support what we do here at the Sound Test Room. Thank you very, very, very much for watching, and I will see you guys later. Ta-ra.